Hello, everyone. I hope you all can hear me. Right, perfect. Can you please confirm if you can hear me, because I had an issue just seconds ago.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
perfect.
hearing
Thank you
you.
so much. Perfect. Thank you so much. So hi, everyone. I'm Salman. I'm from Algeria, an ambassador's program director at African Rebirth Program. And I hope everyone is mentally and physically in good shape, especially in this period of COVID-19, where people usually lose their daily routine, where you see that the best advice that can be given now is to embrace this challenge, to embrace this COVID as a challenge that can strengthen us and make us close to each other more than a global issue that disappoints us and limit our creativity. Also, I want to use this time to remind our dear attendees to keep muting their mics and to be as interactive as they always are. And if you do have any questions, then please make sure not to interrupt any of our speakers, as we will be having a very enough time for a Q&A part where you will have the chance to ask your questions, comments, and whatever came to your mind. Also, don't forget to follow us and tag us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We would love to see you doing that, really. Now, with that being said, I would love to welcome our amazing attendees and thank them for being here. I would also love to welcome our outstanding panelists and appreciate your presence with us, as I consider it as a huge honor to have you among us. Thank you so much. Okay, I know our dear attendees are so excited to know who we are hosting today with us today. So let me cool you down a little and read for you the outstanding backgrounds present with us today. As they say, ladies first, and I hope men don't mind. So I will start with Professor Hirut. Hope men don't mind that, because ladies first, right? All right. So, sorry, internet, as always. So, Professor Hirut Mariam. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. My apologies if I'm not. Professor Hirut Mariam, the first child in her family, had an illustrious background in the academy, whereby she started her career as a researcher in the Academy of Languages and Cultures. She began as a lecturer at the Department of Linguistics and Philology, one of my favorite topics and subjects in university, where she progressively climbed the academy later until she achieved the highest possible academic rank of professor. Her prolific academic record demonstrates leading international research projects, publishing one book and over 3 dozen of peer-reviewed articles in international journals, and serving as a member of editorial boards for international academic journals and as a member of selection committee for international research grants. As a minister in 3 ministries, she has initiated various significant reforms. Professor Hirut Mariam has delivered numerous keynote addresses in various international, continental, and regional forums representing Ethiopia. Noteworthy among these are the UN World Tourism Organization, the ALO Geneva 2018, International Forum of Inclusive and Equity Education, Cali, Colombia, September 2019, World Education Forum, London, January 2019, Balanced and Inclusive Education, Djibouti, UN Technology Bank for the LDC, September 2019, Preparing African Youth for the Fourth Industrial Revolution and Digital Economy in May 2019. Professor Hirut has spent her life breaking invisible glass, sailing and scoring dozens of firsts. She was the first female head of Department of Linguistics and Philology at Addis Ababa University, the first female associate vice president of academic affairs, the first vice president of international relations, partnership, and strategic planning at at the AIU, the first vice president for institutional development at the IU, the first woman full professor in the humanities and social sciences field, the first woman minister of the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs, always the first woman minister of the Ministry of Science and Higher Education, the first woman, again, who worked in four ministerial positions, Minister of Culture, Tourism, Labor and Social Affairs, Science, and Minister of Science and Higher Education. And with the rank of Minister Advisor to the Prime Minister of Ethiopia in social sector. And last but not least, she was a top ranked shortlisted candidate for the African Union Commissioner position for Education, Science, Technology, and Innovation after going through rigorous talented based competition conducted by the panel of eminent Africans. She has held several campaigns that have received positive feedbacks. It was due to the role of the African Union's regional distribution that she could not get the post. I don't have words really to say anything because I'm just impressed. Really, that's amazing to get inspired from a woman to another. Thank you so much for having the time to be with us today. That's a huge honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your very generous
we'll
introduction.
Yeah, my pleasure, really was my honor. Then we will go to Mr. Andrew Mwenda. Mr. Andrew Mwenda is, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, my apologies if I'm not, is an African journalist and entrepreneur. Currently, he is the managing director of Independent Publications Limited, the publishers of The Independent, East Africa's leading current affairs news magazine. He has also invested in schools. He is involved in microfinance, mobile money, and strategic communications, on top of sitting on the boards of some multinational corporations in Africa. Mwenda obtained his undergraduate degree in journalism from Makerere University. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And his master's degree in development studies from the University of London's School of Oriental and African Studies. He has been a visiting fellow at Yale University of the United States, University of Oxford's State School of Business, a John Knights fellow at Stanford University, and visiting fellow at University of Leiden's Africa Studies Center. Mwenda has written and continues to write opinions and commentaries for Al Jazeera and CNN websites, for the New York Times, Foreign Policy, and other international newspapers in Europe, on top of producing radio and television documentaries for BBC. He has also authored and co-authored articles for international academic journals like Africa Affairs, Journal of Modern African Studies, Review of African Political Economy, Journal of Commonwealth Studies, Journal for Contemporary African Studies, and the Journal of Democracy, on top of publishing chapters in several books, among others. Wow, that's a lot for someone who studied journalism. That's just amazing to see such an inspiring man who's actually being with us, and we're so looking forward to hear from you. That's just amazing to have you with us. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, after reading the interesting, I told you guys that we had a very interesting background, and now you can just believe it. And as you guys saw it, now after finishing with that amazing background that I have just read, I would love to welcome Mr. Enosh, the founder and the president of African Rebirth. Mr. Enosh, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome and nice introductions and bios. I welcome Mr. Andrew Mwenda from Uganda and Professor Hirut from Ethiopia. So welcome, and we want to dive into today's discussion as we all know that today it's Digital Africa at African Rebirth. And I would say that I wouldn't exaggerate if I say that good afternoon, Africa, or good morning, Africa, depending on where you are, or good evening, Africa. So thank you very much. I would like to dive into that because this is a very important topic, digital transformation in Africa. As you know from red statistics, World Bank statistics suggest that 28% of Africans use internet. That's an alarming statistic, but we are going to dive into that of a continent of 1.2 billion people. So it's a big gap. But I want to hear from our panelists, and I want to start with Professor, as Salma said, ladies first. I want to start from just simple introduction. What do you, just for starters, what do you mean by digital transformation, and how is it relevant in a post-COVID world?
Well, as we know now, we are in the fourth industrial revolution era. So we're going to have everything smart, smart gadgets, smart systems, smart data, and smart decision. So, well, Africa has missed the previous three industrial revolutions, as we know. But for Africa to get out of poverty, to improve quality of life of the people, and of course, to have a sustainable development, then we have to dive into digital era, the technological transformation. Because this is a great potential for Africa. I mean, we have to make the best out of the digital economy if we have to change our situation in the continent. I say this because, Africa is a continent rich not only in natural resources, but also with youth population. I mean, that's the biggest asset we have in Africa. As you know, 60% of our population is youth, is population. So if we really well prepare our youth and equip them with the relevant digital skills, and of course with other relevance of skills like critical thinking, problem solving, communication, knowledge of emerging technologies, then we'll make our youth to be competitive enough in the global digital economy. That will create huge number of job opportunities, and that will contribute to advancement of our continent, our countries, and individually also each one of us.
Yeah.
So, in fact, preparing the youth to embrace digital transformation should be, I think, is one of the topest urgent engagements for Africa. I mean, because that is a prerequisite, to address the main development challenges we have, like unemployment, poverty, food insecurity, and so on. So, government, for any African government, I think it should be taken as a priority, and then they should take appropriate action to harness this promising demographic dividend we have and to leverage the economic opportunities associated with the digital economy. I mean, now is, I think, Africa's chance, either to make it or break it. So it's a serious agenda that you brought up here in this panel.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. When you say African time, you always read interesting articles by World Bank. Africa time is now. I wanted to pictures, but let's dive. How about you, Mr. Andrew Mwenda? For starters, how do you understand the digital transformation, and how is it more relevant to Africa's economies, mostly in the post-COVID era? You're muted.
We can just begin with this conference. In the pre-COVID era, yes. I am sure I would have been in Dubai, Johannesburg, London, or New York to have this conference. You see, I'm seated at my home, and each one of you is seated in a different place, and we're having a conference. That has reduced the cost of travel, the time that is spent on traveling, and therefore shows how Africa is benefiting. This conference alone shows how Africa is benefiting from digital transformation. But even before COVID, I should tell you, the speed of digital transformation in Africa, I think, was so high. In fact, in certain aspects, Africa is leading. Take the example of mobile money.
Yes.
When I'm in the Western world, whether I'm in Europe or North America, I have to use a credit card, which means I have to sign, swipe, all those things. When I am in Uganda, I go online, I transfer money from my bank account to my phone, and from my phone, I can pay any person, including a poor semi-literate peasant in my village of Kanyandahi in Fort Portal, without having to travel there. So that even the poorest person, you know, the way the Ugandan telephone system is organized is that if you have a telephone line, the regulatory rules say that the telecom company must provide you a mobile money account on your telephone automatically. All you need to do is to activate it by starting a password. So in the age of COVID, when the transfer of money without sanitizing increases the risk of transferring to COVID as well, the use of mobile money has removed the process of touching things and therefore transferring to COVID. So we are already, I think that the COVID has accelerated the rate at which these kinds of transformations can take place. Of course, the other thing that is happening now is banking. Like in Uganda right now, we have been under lockdown. Banks have been only required to have only 10% of the staff working, but because of digital transformation on our continent, it is possible for us to bank and withdraw money without to physically go into a brick and mortar structure called a bank building in order to get money. For me, as a person who runs a media house, I sit in my house and the different reporters, we are right now working virtually from home. The people who got office are those who have vital responsibilities that they require signing things of a paper nature. Even paying taxes these days, we file online. We don't need to go to the tax or the Uganda Revenue Authority. So I think that what COVID has done is it has accelerated the process of the transition from the old ways of doing things, which were largely analog, towards the new digital age, where practically most of the things that you're doing, payment of bills, whether for water, for utilities, whatever it is, you no longer need to interface with anybody. You can do them on different digital platforms, even shopping. You can't believe how much during this COVID era, because right now in Uganda, we're in a lockdown, vehicles are not moving. You can, but motorbikes that deliver food supplies are allowed. I can order food at home. If I cannot cook, if I don't go to the market, I can order food from groceries from a supermarket and are delivered to my home digitally. So I think that Africa has been the most important beneficiary. We are still poor, I must say. Africa is still poor. But if you look at the rate of economic growth in the world, out of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world, I think 6 are from Africa. I can see Professor is from Ethiopia. If you go to the IMF website and look at the fastest growing economies in the world, Ethiopia has been the 2nd fastest growing economy in Africa, 4th fastest growing economy in the world. And if you go to, I was first in Addis Ababa in 1997. It was a city where donkeys and cows and goats were walking through the streets of Addis Ababa. When you go there, it's a sprawling metropolis. You cannot recognize Addis Ababa 24 years later. And that tells you that the rate of change, economic change in Africa has been tremendous. And the digital transformation has been at the heart of that process of change.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. We bring live examples, layman examples, mobile money and stuff. But there are 5 like most dominant tech hubs in Africa. That's Accra, Nairobi, Casablanca, and Lagos. So there are 5, almost like 5. You see there is tremendous success. But another quite disturbing story is that there is more inaccessibility, mostly to rural people who don't use mobile phones. Like I said, 28% of all Africans use internet. That's an alarming statistics to 1 billion people. So here comes the role of government. Now let's start from government. Professor.
But look, I just want to correct you.
Yeah.
You see, the figures of Africa are very misleading. Let me give you an example. The figures on Africa are misleading because they do not deal with Africa's demography. Let me give you a good example. 50% of Uganda's population are below 16 years.
Yeah.
The median age in Uganda is actually 16, median age. The median age in Norway is 48. In China, I think is now 40, in the United States 38. So
Yeah.
that's the median age. Surely we have very many kids who are aged between 1 and 5 or 10. Let me say who cannot be counted as those who are supposed to use, and they constitute maybe kids below 10, maybe about 35% of Uganda's population. So when you say only 28% is the digital penetration or internet penetration, and you compare that with the United States, it is somehow misleading because we have too many kids who are not yet of age to be on internet compared to the developed countries. So I'll give an example. In Uganda, we have a population of about 43 million. 50% are below 16, right? But we have about 20 million internet subscriptions. So that is really 100% of the adult population of Uganda.
Okay. My point is I'm doing on such, I know they don't capture the bigger end, but although there is 28%, I know there is more penetration, but we have to come to the fact that it's still low across the world.
That's true.
I want to come to the government. What key policies? What does others do that we don't do best? What key government policies can be put in place to accelerate this rate like Andrew is talking about? What can governments really do? And I would dwell with either Andrew, or you've worked with governments in various capacities, Uganda, Rwanda, and Zimbabwe, Zambia. Oh, don't worry, it's burning here. Is it too much noise? Do you hear me?
We can hear the siren behind you.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a fire.
It's a fire alarm. Hope everything gets better.
Yeah, I was asking Professor, you work directly with what key policymakers, policies should make us really dwell to increase this acceleration to Africa?
Yeah, thank you very much. Before going into that, I should express my agreement with my brother panelist, saying that COVID-19 crisis has given a chance for Africa to leapfrog a digital transformation. That's true. It's very true here in Ethiopia as well. In addition to addressing the pandemic crisis with digital platforms, we used it for continuing education, with online classrooms, online also shopping and banking and several services. So that was a great opportunity and exercise for Africa that we have to build up on that. And we know now that we can do it, if we are really committed and serious, because it has been tested already and we have proved it. Coming to the point we just mentioned now, yes, of course. Well, of course, I'm not sure about the statistics. They are sometimes misleading, plus or minus, but whatever. I mean, the fact is that despite high mobile phone penetration, and despite significant internet service coverage and progress in e-commerce, I think Africa still faces certain challenges with infrastructure, with connectivity, and also with skilled labor and experts with this digital, skill set. And also lack of adequate policies and legal and regulatory frameworks are also some of the challenges we are facing.
Yes.
That how government should address it. If we have to exploit the full potential in the digital economy, I think we have to address all these things, especially in the rural areas. Connectivity, infrastructure is very, very rare and very low and very poor as well, quality-wise. So if we have to engage the youth, to make employment opportunities and to create jobs and to engage in this digital economy, I think government should invest on infrastructure and also the education system. We have to revise our curriculum. By the way, Ethiopia, I was a Minister for Science and Higher Education. The first thing I did as a reform in that ministry was reforming the curriculum to incorporate a 1 full year courses, new courses, on soft skills, emerging technologies, critical thinking, and communication, and so on. I mean, that's what our youth really need if they have to engage with this new era of yeah.
Okay, thank you. Putting youth at the center of development. How about you, Andrew? What key government? And I want you to tackle a bit of like a private sector, because I am bringing this to Professor because she works directly with the government, and you are in the more private sector. Because in Africa, all things tend to be hit on governments. That government doesn't cry, people also don't cry if they don't act. What's your submission on that?
Well, I think that government has its role.
Yes.
And that is in terms of putting in place the right policies and the right regulatory framework.
Yeah.
The private sector has its own role to play in terms of particular investments that can bring a good risk-adjusted rate of return. But remember, like if you want to build a backbone for internet penetration, I don't think that private investors in many of our poor countries can find it profitable to do that. It's like building highways. So if you want to build a highway, that's an investment where government can make an area where government can make an investment, and the private sector players either become rent from the state, or it's provided for free, depending on the level of income and the level of penetration that the government is seeking. If you look at a country like Rwanda, Rwanda has the highest density of fiber optic cables laid of any country in the third world. In fact, it's even ahead of China in terms of that density. And so Rwanda provides an example. And there has also been a huge investment by the government of Rwanda, not just in the fiber optic network, but in other forms of infrastructure and policies to encourage ICT. Yet the level of internet penetration of Rwanda and Uganda are almost the same. What it shows you is that there is a limit to how much government can facilitate things from happening. If you look at a country like Kenya, I don't think the government of Kenya has done as much as the government of Rwanda in investing in ICT as a driver of change. But internet penetration in Kenya is in one of the highest in the world. I think the last time I checked about 3 years ago, it was about 78%. It was in the league of some of the richest countries in the world. And that shows you that the private sector in Kenya is much more developed, that even with less government investment, you have private sector partners who can fill that gap. So we cannot have a solution, what we would call a one-size-fits-all solution of what the government should do and what the private sector should do. Each of these countries have different economic and social and educational endowments, and these endowments give them different capacities for action in terms of influencing the outcomes in investment in the digital transformation. So if you come to a country like Uganda, if you are importing laptops, computers, and they are tax-free. If you are investing in technology to enhance digital education in schools, it's free. You'll be actually surprised that today in Uganda, we are talking about how to ensure that education continues online for students who can afford online, and those in rural areas who do not have smartphones. Government wants to buy radios, I think 7 or 10 million radio handsets, in order to ensure that actually people don't even study online. When we talk of digital, they can even study via radio. So I think that COVID has made many countries around the world rethink how to do things in this new digital world.
Thank you. And it brings, Professor, you mentioned something like putting youth at the center of development, but they should also be mindset shift to embrace this, the benefits, to reap the full benefits of the 21st century digital transformation. What mentalities should the youth really engage in, and why should young people embrace digital transformation?
Before that, I forgot to mention one point in relation to this connectivity and infrastructure. I mean, I'd like to mention Ethiopia's experience. Well, Ethiopia used to have only one, government-controlled Ethio Telecom service giver. But right now, we are, a big part of that telecom has been in bid. We are bidding to have private companies, international private companies, and to come and work with us. I think this is a huge step forward, inviting private companies who can help us, who can support us, work with us. And as for the problem, I should also mention that, we have in rural areas, we don't even have access to electricity, leave alone access to internet. So we need to invest a lot on that. And it's a government's priority, but not only governments, private sector should also engage, I think. So as what should the youth do, right?
Yes.
First of all, I think the youth should be conscious, should be aware of what's going on, what this digital era means, and what the prerequisite for it is, what its advantage, what its potentials, and what needs to be done, because they have to prepare themselves. They have to be aware, they have to be conscious. There is a huge potential, especially with regard to employment, both locally as well as internationally. We have a large number of this medium, small, and macro enterprises around. So they need to be converted into, digital.
Yes.
So the youth has lots of work to do. But first of all, they have to be educated, trained, and have the mentality of that we can do it. And this is it. And this is the future. What the future labor work requires is digital skills and other relevant. So I think they have to engage themselves with this and skill themselves, educate themselves, be aware and organize, and government should help, universities should help, and other organizations should also take part. It should be a joint venture. Since we have 60% of the population youth, I think they should take responsibility and take it very seriously.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much. Andrew, I want to come to you, and I want to bring the aspect of globalization and international politics and geopolitics. How can Africa embrace the forces of globalization? Because we see, like most international or multinational companies would want to come invest in Africa, but how can we African reap benefits? Because they could come for making profit repatriation. How could we balance the forces of globalization and geopolitics to embrace the digital transformation that will benefit Africa? Because most of the time we are in the victim case. They trump a lot of digital transformation, but in the real sense, it doesn't really benefit directly. How do we go around that?
Well, Enoch, I don't think I would agree with you that we don't benefit so much from digital transformation.
No. But not benefit digital transformation, like benefiting from the amount of investment that they've been put there. It's not really proportional to the amount and reports or to the wording around that. That's what I mean.
So let me structure my response by giving you context.
Right.
Really, African countries are in a struggle to develop from what we'd call poor, backward agricultural economies into advanced industrial economies that are rich, affluent industrial economies. Now, development takes place in the context of international trade. There is no country that has created an autarkic economy that has developed. You have to be involved in international trade. Now, international trade is a value chain. Some countries produce cotton, others weave cloth, others market high fashion. Some countries mine iron ore, others make steel, others sell automobiles. How much you earn from international trade depends on your position in that value chain. So if you produce and export just cotton, you earn 2% of the international market price. Yeah. If you weave cloth, you earn about 20%. If you market high fashion, Dolce & Gabbana, Louis Vuitton, Burberry, Hugo Boss, you earn about 65 to 70% of the international market price. So what defines a poor country is when you produce and sell cotton like Uganda, you earn 2%. So you are a highly indebted poor country. Yes. If you make cloth, you earn 20%. You are perhaps a middle-income country, Bangladesh. And if you market high fashion, you are Italy and France, you are an advanced economy. The process of development is the process of upgrade from these, from producing and exporting or selling low-value products to high-value products. Why is multinational capital a poor vehicle for Africa's economic transformation? It is because, as a rule, multinational companies do not transfer the most innovative components of their business to their subsidiaries. Yes. Apple is not going to design the iPhone from Uganda. It is made in California. At best, Uganda can assemble iPhones. But look at this. The design and marketing of the iPhone it constitutes 65%. Assembly constitutes 15 to 17%. But if you are DRC, you are selling coltan, maybe you get 5% of the price. Yes. So multinational capital, the way Africa has joined the rest for globalization has not been for the benefit of this continent. In fact, the way we have been integrated into the international, into the global system is as producers and sellers of raw products. Now, if you want to my view, I think if Africa even wants to transform digitally, we must own the platforms, or we must be active participants in the value that is created on these digital platforms. Exactly. We must be able to produce smartphones, because Africa buys 500 million smartphones, I think, per year. That's a huge number. Why don't we have manufacturing plants for mobile phones when we are such a huge market? It means we are donating significant value to the outside world. We are using Facebook, we are using Twitter, we are using Google and other platforms that if you go to China, they have their own equivalent of Google. You go to Russia, they have their own equivalent of Facebook. I think that we need to develop our own digital platforms as value-added products in order to increase the dynamism, of our economies. Without being players in that value chain, in that value of digital platforms, we shall always remain in perpetual poverty.
Thank you so much. And that's exactly what I was meaning.
Yes.
Can
I add something?
Sure, yeah, please.
Yeah, yes. I fully agree with what has been said. Africa should not remain to be consumer of the digital products. Africa should plan, should intend to be producer, manufacturer, of the digital products in the long run. But to begin with, right now, maybe some of the big companies around the world would like to outsource, some part of their work. And our youth should get used to that, should get used to the skills and be prepared, and also replication of what has been done outside Africa. Services like, do you know this Uber cab, the taxi?
Yes, Uber.
Yeah, now we have in Ethiopia a similar kind of taxi transportation services digitized.
Yes,
just like Uber. So basically, they took the very, the idea, but they have somehow tailor-made to fit into Ethiopian case situation. And now we have 3-4 companies local in Ethiopia beginning of this kind of service. So I think we can go step by step. We can replicate, we can adopt, and we can receive outsourcing services from abroad. But then eventually we have to aim for being producers, not just consumers.
Exactly. Thank you so much. That's what exactly I was meaning, because we tend to celebrate more when Google opens its hub, like in Ghana. But what's the long-term plan? Can we have our version of Google? If, like Andrew said, they get all the minerals in Congo, but look how much a Congolese would pay for an iPhone where its source is. So it's beyond, it's not even for 100% profit, it's abnormal profits. So I think as young people on the platform, we should be dwelling more on innovation to have our own plants. And the good thing that everyone here at least comes from every African country, either north, east, or west. So take the innovations back home. Don't dwell on Google. Google will take it back to California. So thank you so much. I would want it open to the audience. I believe they have very amazing questions or ideas, and Andrew and Professor would respond to them. But my time is over. I want to thank you for the wonderful discussions, and I hand over back to Salma, the moderator. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that interesting inputs that you guys have just made. It was so beneficial. Myself, I have really enjoyed listening to you, and I did not know about a lot of things. So thank you so much for that amazing presence and for that amazing discussions that you guys have just made. Thank you so much. Now, dear attendees, as I promised, your favorite part of every session, the Q&A, I would love to open the floor to everyone to ask questions. I also want to remind you to keep it relevant and as brief as you can. It would be much better this way. If you do have any questions, please raise your hand or use the chat box for any written questions. Here you go. Okay. If there's any raised hands. Okay, so you can use the chat box or you can just raise your hand. All right, any questions? It's your chance to ask your questions. All right, I think they are shy enough not to.
Any questions? Okay, see. Johnny, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, thanks. I didn't hear you. Thanks, Enoch. Thanks, facilitator. I'm missing the name. Thanks a lot, Professor, and thanks, Andrew. Mine is a simple question. In Africa,
Before starters, you can mention where you come from, just for the case of Andrew, and to get a bit of, they will be interesting to mention where I come from. And question, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm John Sejo from Malawi. My question, or rather, my question would sound long, a little bit winding, but at the end, it's going to make sense. In Africa, we are really suffering this issue of corruption, whereby sometimes those people in positions, especially when they are old, they don't care about the future generation. All what they care is at least they gather a lot of money for themselves, and they even fail to use them within their time of existing. But now I really don't know, what should we do as the youth so that at least we should push for all those change in policies to the extent of putting our leaders at the right position of ensuring that they are putting right policies into the systems whereby we fight this huge pandemic of corruption. Because you see that sometimes the private sectors, they even fail to penetrate into Africa just because corruption is everywhere. For them to register their companies, corruption is involved. For them maybe to invest more monies, you see that some monies are going into corruption as well. So corruption is becoming a cancerous sector in our societies. What should we do as the youth in Africa to deal with this? Yeah, thank you. That's my question.
Yeah.
Was my question clear? I don't know.
Yes,
Was I
I
making?
think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Either you, Professor, can go and answer, please. Go ahead and answer the question. Did you hear the question very well? He's saying that the big problem is corruption. So how do you organize and bring leaders to accountability? That was his question. In order to embrace even this digital revolution and internet, yeah.
Who got the chance to answer first? I'm sorry. Who are you pointing to?
May I
No,
answer?
to you, all of you, to the panel, to all of you.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I could say that Africa is a poor continent, you know, and the life standard of our population is very low, suffering. Some of them are even below poverty line. So we shouldn't tolerate corruption here. I mean, if we have leaders who are corrupted, then the youth should question, should ask, you know, tell them to correct themselves. I think there must be some kind of some bodies and some structures to go to for that. In the case of Ethiopia, for example, we have anti-corruption commission. So if someone, you know, is suspected to be engaging in corruption somehow, then people go to anti-corruption and then file, and then investigation will take place. So we need to have a system that, you know, disgusts corruption. That means we have to teach the new generation to, you know, the youth should also develop the attitude of hating and disgusting corruption, because they're the ones who are going to take over the next generation. The next leaders are going to be the present time youth. So anyway, I mean, it's a serious question. It's a challenge. I cannot give you, you know, an answer, a clear answer, but the system should fight, and the youth should be part of that process, to question, to ask, and, you know, to push to stop corruption.
Hello?
I think Andrew wants to.
Thank you so much, Professor Hirut.
No, I don't like to comment on matters of corruption because my views are unpopular and controversial. You know, I personally, I have spent the last 30 years of my life reading about economic development history of the United States, of Japan, of China, of practically South Korea, Taiwan, every country that has developed. And I have one evidence from history that all countries during the development phase have high levels of corruption. It has not stopped any country from developing. The only country where I can say there was less corruption during its intense period of transformation from a poor country to a rich country is Singapore. It's the only one, it's an exception. Italy, Germany, France, they have all of been corrupt. I don't know why Africans believe that it is somehow it is only Africa that where corruption has stopped it from growing and developing. So I consider corruption to be an, I don't know how to say it. You see, I don't know what its effects are, but there's one thing I know from history, that every country that I have read that is rich today, during that intense period when it was transforming from a poor to a rich country, it had high levels of corruption. Has anyone of you been to China? In Uganda, here in Africa, where there's no corruption because there's nothing to steal. Go to China, it's the fastest growing economy in the world. It's the fastest transforming society in the history of mankind. The corruption of that country is heavier than Mount Rwenzori and Kilimanjaro combined. You see, even if you go to the Alps and the Everest mountains, it's too heavy. Why is China not failing? China right now is in 5G. Huawei is doing great things and bribing everyone to get those things done. So I think that if you ask me, what are the factors that define a transforming society. There are two things I have read in the last 30 years of my life. One, the terms of trade. Please find for me a country whose the terms of trade refers to the price index of your exports relative to the price index of your imports. The value of the things you sell abroad compared to the value of the things you buy from there. It does not matter whether that country is a dictatorship, a democracy, a monarchy, murderous, doesn't respect human rights, as long as what it sells abroad is of high value and compared to what it buys from there, that country will be developed. Two, and the two are related, as long as the largest components of the economy of that country are controlled by nationals, or for that matter, capital that is national, domestic, or local. It may be owned by a foreigner, but whose base is that country. So there must be national ownership of the commanding heads of the economy, backed by export of goods of high value relative to the imports. Those are the two important elements. Whether that country is corrupt or honest, whether it's a dictatorship or a democracy, whether it abuses human rights or respects them, whether it kisses everybody or punches them, that country will develop as long as you have those two things: national ownership and high value goods that are produced, goods and services that are produced. So if you ask me, what should Africa focus on? Let us focus on two things. How much of our economy do we own? Two, how much value do we add to those goods that we produce and sell abroad? If you answer those correctly, right, I will tell you your country is on the path to development. Corruption may be something that is, it's like saying that because someone cheats on their wife or their husband, because he's cheating in a relationship, then the marriage will break. It's not true. Cheating is very hurtful in any relationship, but cheating does not always lead to a relationship breaking apart. In fact, if you read books by the relationship therapist Esther Perot, and if you read some evolutionary psychologists, they will tell you that some little bit of cheating is very healthy for a relationship to stay strong.
I mean, you have made your point more
Thank you so much
controversial
for
now.
I think I'd like to comment on what has been just said, you know.
And,
The fact that corruption is everywhere in the globe, in the world, doesn't imply that we have to do it and it's normal, you know. Because
absolutely, yes.
it's stealing, you know, from the pocket of the poor countries. So, yeah, I know it is tough. I know it is, you know, very complicated and difficult to control, but still we have to, you know, aspire to control it, to get over it, and to have corruption-free Africa. At least ideally, we should go for it, yeah.
And I think what happens in Africa, it's not corruption. It is theft of money, because corruption is kind of packaged where it is crude accumulation of capital. You know, it's in the Western world, it's called lobbying. What's that lobbying called? You know, it's you know, it has a lot sort of names, but that's Andrew's views.
But Enoch, let me explain it this way. Actually, I think that from a moral perspective, corruption is very painful. Just imagine resources meant for all being used by one person or a few people. It's very, very painful. It's morally wrong. Just like I have said, cheating is morally wrong. But what I want to say is that I feel like we are so concerned with it. It's as if every single thing is reducible to it. I will give you an example of Uganda. If you look at Uganda's budget this year, the fourth largest component or fifth largest component of expenditure, the first is infrastructure. The second is education. The third is security. The fourth is interest payments on loans. The fifth is accountability, trying to fight corruption. Yet this country is collapsing under the weight of corruption. There is so much struggle for corruption now. If you ask how much money is Uganda putting into adding value to its product, or ensuring that Ugandans are able to own shares in all these big corporations, multinationals, whether they are banks, manufacturing, telecommunications, everywhere Uganda's economy is owned by foreigners. So it's very little. How come we spend a huge percentage of our budget on fighting the corruption where we achieve nothing or very little, and invest almost nothing in value addition? Because your priorities are upside down. the things that are so important economically are ignored to address things that are very important emotionally and morally. You see, corruption is a bad thing. There are many bad things in the world. I don't think governments should abuse human rights. But I also don't think that abuse of human rights stops your country from developing anyway. Go to China. There's a lot of abuse of human rights, but the country is developing. So perhaps because they put more attention, the citizens there, on their government, ensuring that they upgrade from producing these Kabiriti phones, what are they called, these cheap phones, to be producing digital phones, rather smartphones. So I want to see Uganda putting a lot of effort in producing smartphones. What is an iPad, the generic name? These mobile devices that people can that create a lot of value. I don't even see Uganda investing any money actually in trying to convert the raw cotton it produces into finished cloth. But the money we put in fighting corruption is too much. By the way, I should also tell you, I have this principle that whenever you're trying to address a problem, you should ask yourself two things. Does this really matter to growth? So you should ask, if you're going to fight corruption, ensure that everybody doesn't cheat on their wives, all this, does it matter to growth? That is one. Two, is there anything you can do about it and have impact? When I look at that, I feel that corruption doesn't matter to growth, in which case we should treat it as a lesser of a priority. And then two, does it, can you achieve anything? Uganda has about 20 institutions fight corruption, but every day corruption becomes bigger and bigger, which means we are involved in pretense. And I don't know whether we human beings enjoy what I would call mutual and self-deceit. We deceive ourselves that we are doing something when we're not even doing anything. We have the Inspectorate of Government, we have the Police Criminal Investigations Department, we have the Anti-Corruption Unit in the President's Office, we have the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, then we have Internal Security Organization fighting corruption, we have military intelligence fighting corruption, you have there was something called civic defense team fighting corruption. Then you have the mass media in Uganda fighting corruption. You have radio and television talk shows fighting corruption. You have civil society organization on every arm and leg of our existence fighting corruption. You have the president saying he's fighting corruption. The opposition
and fighting corruption.
The donors are fighting corruption, and the corruption is growing and growing and growing and growing. The more we fight it, the larger it grows. And I feel like we are taking too much attention on something which has less developmental impact and ignoring the things that could really transform our country.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Andrew, for that inputs. It was like a lot of corruption up there, and I can see you actually really have an interest. You just don't know about that. So thank you so much for that. Okay, let's take more questions because our attendees are going to lose their mind just in seconds. Okay, Mr. Albert, you can take that floor and ask your question. Albert, Elijah, yes, go ahead, please.
Hello, thank you very much.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello? Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please ask your question.
Yes, I don't have a question, especially. I have a contribution on the question that has been asked. I am Obet Elijah. I come from Zimbabwe. Currently, I'm based in Mozambique, where I'm doing my business, and also I'm working as an entrepreneur. Right. I was needed to contribute on the question that has been asked about the problem of Africa in terms of corruption and the issue of accepting the digitalization system. The challenge that we are having in Africa, our governance is that they are failing to plan. What makes government to be able to plan? The government that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. If a nation sets what we call as Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs will help the government in each and every African country to control how the operations are being done in each and every sector. The challenge that we have is that many people right now in the government officials, they are not development oriented. They are not development oriented, and they need us, new generation, to be able to educate them. How can we become development oriented or future oriented? to be future oriented in each and every nation, each and every government must have to use what we call sustainable development goals. Sustainable development goals where they can be able to create what we call indicators in each and every sector of their projects or in their ministry. These indicators, they use them on how they are going to control their process. Sometimes they are not able to implement these sustainable development policies, and ending up for them, some of them they are failing to be accountable of the finances that they have. In Africa, no country that is poor, I deny that, no country that is poor, but it's only that our government that we have, they are failing to plan. They must, as new generation, we must be able to find strategies and ways that we can be able to teach our governments. How can we be able to teach them? We must have to teach them little by little. We will find a strategy so that our government can be able to implement what we call monitoring and evaluation of every project in each and every ministry. Yes, I think that is my contribution that I was wanting just to add on the issue that has been talked, and also on the issue of digitalized system that we have entered, we are using now due to COVID-19. Many countries that we must have to be adapted to digitalization. Why? Because COVID has not come to stay. COVID is not going to go. It's like malaria. When malaria comes, like especially I was reading the history of Mozambique. In Mozambique, it kills many people. Why? Because they've never found any medicine to treat malaria. But as time goes on, people, they were using strategies in order to avoid or to reduce the death of malaria, or to help those people who were suffering with malaria. Then later on, they find the solution of malaria. So it means, as with COVID, we must have to go into the digitalization economy. And the issue of digitalization, it will help us mostly. It avoids, sometimes it's going to reduce the issue of, like, for example, robberies of public funds,
yes,
or even private companies, man. I think that was my contribution. Thank you because of our time.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I'm sorry for interrupting you because we do have a lot of questions. Thank you so much. Okay, we will go next is Tanga. I think she was the one raising her hand right after Albert. Please, Tanga, keep it as brief as you can. Thank you. Yes, Tanga.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Selma. Yes, on that aspect of asking, I would like to ask both Mr. Andrew and Prof Hirut on how, since we understand that in order for us, okay, before I go to the question, oh yeah, I'm Tanga and I come from Namibia. I would like to now ask on the concept of saying that in order for us to implement digital transformation, that's the purposes of us looking at either the process, transforming the process, or transforming the cultures in the organizations and in the government. So now I would like us to answer, because one of the biggest problems that we have, let's say in Namibia, I am a biologist per se, and the biggest problem we have had is malaria across borders. But trying to get the government on board, both by regulatory government regulations and as well as the politics that goes on in the government offices, it becomes a constraint to someone who's, let's say, in a profession and in a specific profession, trying to maneuver those very lines because we are not aware of them. And how do we how do we implement it? How do we allow ourselves to get that space to be able to make that that change, that transformative change, both in the process as well as in the organization, or let's say the government now, to say who's ruling. Hope my question is clear.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was clear and brief. Thank you so much. So who can take this question? Mr. Andrew or Professor Hirut?
Professor can do a better job than me because she has worked in the government.
Yeah, Well, I think this digital transformation or revolution is not going to be an option, first of all, but it's going to be a mandatory, because the employment landscape has been changed and it's going to be changed for good. So everything is going to be digitized. And studies show that, in the coming years, many low and middle skilled jobs will also be replaced by automation, advanced manufacturing, 3D printing, robotic, and so on. So we have no option but to work towards digitizing the whole system. In that case, the culture, as has been clearly said, and the policies, regulations, and basically the infrastructure, the connectivity, and the education system, that shapes up our youth to have the necessary skills that requires this digital economy. So, I mean, we have multitask thing, and actors should also take part in this, and the whole thing should be changed, and it should be changed very quickly and rapidly. Otherwise, we'll be lagging behind. I mean, the world is a space of competition. Unless we do it quickly and catch up with the rest of the world, again, we'll be lagging behind. Our businesses, our country, our continent is going to lag behind, and that would be a serious problem for us, for Africans.
Thank you so much for that input, Professor Hirut. Appreciate it. Yes, Mr. Andrew, do you want to add anything briefly, please, if that was possible?
I think very little, in the fact that Africa joining the digital world is not an option. That is something that Africa has to do. Perhaps what is an option that we can do that's beneficial to us is how do we participate in the digital world? As both I and Professor said earlier, if we participate as consumers, we shall be doomed. But if we participate both as consumers, but also as producers of some of these digital platforms, then we shall be able to secure a lot of benefits from the digital revolution.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Amos, you can be next, and please be as brief as you can. Sorry. Yes, Amos.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, I got in late, but I found Andrew's contribution. Good to see you, Andrew. You're one of my very favorite person to follow. I found Andrew commenting on the issue of corruption. I think corruption is not something one can legislate. It's more of an upbringing. Africa needs a very paradigm shift and a cultural evolution, I should say, to be able to fight corruption. And I believe that it allow me, Andrew, to disagree. I believe it really retards development in a way. Even when you raised very good points to do with producing more so that we have balance of trade, I believe there are many government corrupt officials who can get in the way of that, who can get in the way of how much economy that the locals can own. Because the people with more money can easily pay for bribes or pay their way up to get the deals they need. We've seen it with our local business people here in Uganda, where they are outcompeted by multinational companies just because of some people at the top that get bribes and are myopic and not able to see the sustainability of insisting on going to own local businesses. And another, just to comment a little bit about the topic, I think Andrew has hit on it as well. How much are we prepared to produce, be equal contributors in the world of the digital? Most of is owned or is stored and owned by players, and how much control we have over data. The people with data are going to be the most with power. And I wonder whether Andrew could comment on how we can leverage that. China is already on 5G. I mean, they have satellites all over space. And I wonder how, as Africa, how can we leverage that? Thank you.
Well, Amos, you see, to answer your question, let me answer two components of your question. One is on corruption, the other is on our participation in the digital platforms. You see, even if I were to agree with you that corruption is injurious to growth, I would say it must be taking particular forms in Africa that make it that injurious to growth, because other countries has not been that negative. The second thing is that, in fact, my own suspicion is that there are so many factors that drive the growth and transformation of an economy. And they may even vary from region to region, country to country, and from epoch to epoch. You see, the first country to industrialize was Britain. It industrialized through textiles. The second round of countries to industrialize, Germany and the United States, it was through automobiles. And you find the third round of countries to industrialize, like Japan and South Korea, was through electronics. So there are many factors that drive growth. One is human capital. The other is the quality of your institutions. Your geography. There are so many elements. Corruption could be one of those elements. But even if it were there, I am inclined to believe, even if I agreed with you that it's a problem in Africa, I would still say it's a symptom of something. It's a symptom of perhaps weak states, weak institutions, so that individuals take advantage of weak institutions to divert public funds into private pockets. So the problem you may need to solve is not corruption, perhaps, is to solve the weakness of your institutions. I don't know whether you get what I'm saying, but I feel it's so easy a straw for people to hold on because it is morally and emotionally, it's very emotive and quite morally appealing, and that's why we cling on it. If I were to tell Ugandans your biggest problem is the control of your economy by multinational capital, it's a bigger problem than corruption, they will hang me. They may not understand why the dominance of Airtel and the MTN, the dominance of Standard Chartered Bank, Barclays Bank, and Stanbic Bank in our economy is a worse problem than corruption. Because you see, if you have about 80% of your GDP being produced by multinational companies, all the profits they're making, they're shipping it abroad. It means you're making a net deduction out of what is produced in your country and sending it to your shareholders abroad. If Uganda stole money and did not send it to bank accounts in Sweden or in Switzerland or in Dubai and invested it in Uganda, it may have less damaging effect, because essentially from an economic point of view, there is no net deduction out of the economy. So you may find that the dominance of multinational capital in your economy may be more injurious to the future of your economy than actual corruption, especially if that corruption is by citizens who don't send money abroad, you see. But I don't want to go there because it's an emotive subject where judgments are based on moral considerations, not on rational calculations. So now let me come to the issue of national ownership and national participation. You see, I believe that we have to have multinational capital with us. It is not the presence of multinational capital, but how we engage it. If you say you have started your own automobile company, your own smartphone company, your own this as Uganda, and you invite Samsung to invest with you, maybe they take 20% stake in order for you to benefit from their technology, in order for you to benefit from their skills, their technical expertise, from their managerial and organizational experiences, and also to benefit from the capital they have, plus the international marketing network they already have. So you begin a product in Uganda in a partnership with Samsung, and you benefit from the whole global network of shops and markets that they have. So multinational capital is important to our economy. It's not the problem. The problem is how we partner with it. Because right now, if you come to Africa, it comes carte blanche. They are allowed to invest without 100% shareholding, 100% profit repatriation. There are very few requirements for them even to use local raw materials. I've seen the Chinese build dams in Uganda. At one time, they were importing cement. When Uganda has so many cement factories, they're importing steel. Our steel companies were going bankrupt from loans, you see, from loans in banks. And I think it's not just multinational capital, it is how do we engage it? And let me come to the final point. If you think about it, this may not even be the problem of the state. The state may also be, the weakness of the state may be a consequence of something. That is, we have the weakness of domestic capital. The domestic, national, local capitalists are too weak, and they're not organized as a collective, or they're divided along ethnic lines, so they don't create powerful lobby groups, or what can I call them, pressure groups, like Uganda Manufacturers Association, the Uganda Chamber of Commerce, to become powerful institutions that can enjoy a particular leverage on state policy to ensure that state policy comes to weigh heavily, rather that the business pressure weighs heavily on the state to ensure that when you are attracting foreign investment, it should come as a complement. It should come to complement, not to supplant local capital. What we have done in Uganda is actually multinational capital has come and supplanted local capital, become dominant, and now we're involved in a massive transfer of resources out of our countries to abroad. The final point, the African Union appointed a panel of experts chaired by former South African President Thabo Mbeki to study the amount of money lost in Africa per year. And they found every year Africa loses about 80 billion, something like that, 80 billion in illicit transfers. 75% of that was money being shipped out of Africa by illegal activities of multinational companies through transfer pricing, smuggling, and tax evasion. 75%. And how much were African leader thieves stealing? Only 5%. Let me tell you, we Africans are going to kill each other over the 5% and will never address the 75%. That's our problem, really, because we don't see where the biggest hemorrhage to our economies is best, even when our own African Union has done a study and found that the biggest problem is actually the activities of illicit activities of multinational companies.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Andrew, and I hope that just answered your question. Thank you so much. Now next, he was really insisting, Mr. Mazir. He was the one, he couldn't just raise his hand. So please take the floor and just, yes, Mazir?
Yeah,
I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, that's Mazir. Yeah, thanks, Salma. So it's Mazir from Libya. So it's not a question, it's just a brief comment on this interesting discussion we had today. So in my humble perspective, I think, the slow digital transformation in Africa is due to lack of a economic diversification mindset in many African countries, especially in the oil producing countries, like, example, where I come from, Libya, we kind of like depend much on a conventional kind of like an economy, and we are not kind of like diversifying our economy in a way that we can, push towards a digital economy. So I think it's a lack of, mindset of a economic diversification in many African countries. So that's just a simple comment on today's webinar. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for adding that. Anyone who wants to answer that, probably add more to that? Mr. Andrew or Professor? Okay, so otherwise we'll be taking that question from the chat box, which says, please, Professor Hirut, can you, as an advice for as youth to help us to get where she is and make a change and a difference where we are? He's Ibrahim from Kenya. He wants advice from you on how did you get to this, where you are now, as an advice to us as youth who probably wants to be you, exactly like you today. The first lady and everything, I would say.
Well, I think I'm kind of lucky in a way, but then I was always, I think, trying to take things very seriously when I was a student and then a university teacher. And then I was, doing things very, what can I say? It's a difficult question to answer about myself. Anyway, I got visibility because I was trying to take my work very seriously, and I use my time, I budget my time very carefully because I'm also a mother and a wife, and then as a woman also have other social and family obligations. But I think it's really possible if you have a vision, and if you think that, if you have a proper mind state for it, and you have role models, and you have supports from family and friends, I think nothing is impossible, and one can do it. Anyone can do it if I did it. That's what I can say.
Yeah, thank you so much. And those who asked this, including me and everyone, take this in consideration, of course. So yeah, thank you so much for that amazing session that we had, and thank you so much for taking time to answer questions. So for those who we did not mention, so type your questions there, and you will like absolutely have your answers there. So no worries at all. YouTube is always open. Okay. Now, dear attendee, sorry. So as we have some minutes left, I insist about that. I would love to use them to welcome our panelists again one more time for some talks. Let me give the mic to the First Lady. Again, I insist about that. It's for us. We would love to hear it from you as briefly as you can.
Sorry, I didn't get it. I didn't get the question. The line was not clear enough. What did you say?
Closing remarks, just just closing words. Closing words you want to say at the end of this.
Just a few closing remarks. Our internet's not nice. Just a few closing remarks. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah.
1 minute. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, I think I should have said it earlier, but I'm very much excited and very happy to take part in this panel discussion. Very timely, very important. And thank you for inviting me over. And the home take message or point that I'd like to make is everybody should know that digital transformation is a game changer, in the global economy. It's a game changer. We cannot skip it. We cannot postpone it. We have to engage it as soon as possible. Otherwise, we are going to lag behind as a continent, as a country, as a company or business or even individual. So for that, at least the youth should try to fill in the skill gap that they have, by taking either formal or informal kind of training, self-learning or, kind of thing. And we should also take into consideration to revise and review our curricula, starting from the primary education to up to university. It has to be relevant, to the current labor market demands. So we have to include this digital skill courses in every program or course. That's what I want to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you here with us. It was so amazing. Thank you so much. Also, Mr. Andrew Mwenda, we would love to hear your last words with us as well. And please keep it brief as well. Thank you.
Well, I think two things. One, I think that the digital transformation is very important for Africa. It comes with a lot of positives. It also has negatives. As a positive, it gives us an opportunity to leapfrog rich countries that have already invested in a lot of analog technology and they have huge sunk costs. For us, we can just leapfrog and go into the mobile money age and stuff like that. But we should also be cautious, especially politically, that digital platforms, especially when it comes to platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Google, they have become platforms for the propagation of ideas that are radical and extremist in nature that tend to lead to more polarization. The more we deepen some of this digital transformation and shift it from business to the political sphere, the more it will tend to promote fake news, extremism, polarization, and that may be toxic to our politics and really cause problems. The Western world is going through a very dangerous period of the rise of people like Donald Trump, the rise of Brexit, and all kinds of the rise of neo-Nazis in Germany. So we must embrace digital transformation in the economic sphere where it has better positive impact. We must be very cautious and careful and regulate its use politically to advance fascism, ethnic and religious divisions and stuff like that. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for that amazing closing remarks, and thank you so much for being here with us. It was a huge pleasure as really both you and Professor Hirut. Now, Inash, the floor is yours for some words as well. Thank you so much again. Mr. Inash.
Okay, thank you, Salma, and our humble panelists, knowledgeable, humble, and man and woman of substance. Thank you so much, Andrew, for your time. Thank you so much, Professor Hirut, for your time. It means a lot to young people hear from great leaders and great speakers like you come and share your knowledge, expertise, experience. It's what makes a difference. And digital transformation is a very good and a timely topic, like Professor said. So let's embrace it. You know, at African Rebirth, just like our mission states that we defy mediocrity, inspire and empower young African leaders. So there is no mediocrity in embracing Google platforms, Twitter. We should have our own innovations. I am not a scientist, but if you're a scientist and you're innovating in a certain technological way or scientist, please innovate. We want to hear a Google Africa, a Twitter Africa, and we challenge. Because look, when you call someone on your mobile phone, there's something called plus. Uganda is +25, Ethiopia is 2+151. In the United States and in Canada, it's 1. What does it mean? The satellites or the connection or the control, there's just, it first signals to the United States and comes to you. So if I call someone in rural Uganda, they first hear it in the United States. So if you own information, you own the world. And that's what we challenge younger people in Africa to have these innovative ideas. Think, dream big. The world is so big, you can't feel the dream, the world. And so the world is just here for us to dream and explore. Let's be innovative. And I thank you very much. We have come to an end. Everyone keep the debate on social media. Please don't feel intimidated to challenge Andrew. Andrew loves debate. Challenge his notion of corruption, bring another version. So let's keep it an interactive session. And like I usually say, we count on you and Africa counts on you. So thank you very much. Have a very good night.
Thank you so much.
To enjoying the day.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very
so
much.
Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you.
And please stay safe.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Arigato gozaimasu.
Good night for us.
Thank you.
Bye. See you next time.
Yeah. See you.